We are so excited to be here with you today, talking about fossils with our paleontology and field specialist, Scott Williams. In just a few minutes, Scott is going to take us on an adventure through geologic time, exploring fossils. Please note that our friends at Streamable Learning are with us today. If you have any IT issues, if you can't hear me, if you can't see us, type that into the chat box and let them know. They'll help you out before we get to the beef of the content. If you have any questions throughout the program, we'll do our best to answer those, or at least save time at the end to answer those. Type them in the chat box as well. Before we begin, we're going to show you where we're at here in beautiful Bozeman, Montana, and at the Museum of the Rockies. There we are, Museum of the Rockies. We are about 80 miles north of Yellowstone National Park and 315 miles south of our friends in Canada. We're on the campus of Montana State University. Here in a second, we're going to see the entrance to our museum. Does anyone know what kind of dinosaur that is that greets us? Go ahead and type it into the chat box, at least we know you're with us that way too.
Erica says T-Rex.
You got it. Good guesses. Show us our T-Rex, Angie. Oh yeah.
Good job.
Have any of you been to the Museum of the Rockies before, or to Montana at all? Hopefully you have a chance to come visit us sometime, whether it's on a field trip or to explore our Dinosaurs Under the Big Sky exhibit, which you can see in front of you. As we venture into the space, we'll run into several dinosaur species along the way. Museum of the Rockies, we're down in the bowels of it right now, below all this stuff, where they house one of North America's largest collections of North American dinosaurs. Am I saying that right, Scott?
Yep.
There we have Mr. Allosaurus. Maybe it's a Mrs. We'll continue on to the Hall of Horns and Teeth, where we see the T-Rex and Triceratops. I'm going to turn it over to Scott now. He's going to tell us more about fossils. Thanks for hanging out with us today.
Thanks, Jamie. Hi, I'm Scott. I'm the Paleontology Lab and Field Specialist. I want to welcome you to the Museum of the Rockies Fossil Prep Lab. We're down here, as Jamie said, in the basement. This is our main fossil prep lab. This is one of the first times we've done this, so you're going to get to see some real cool things, some in-progress specimens that we're working on. We're going to cover a lot of topics. What we're going to talk about today is, how do you find a dinosaur? How do you find a fossil? Where do you look? When you find one, what do you do? How do you get it out of the ground? And then once you bring it back here to a museum or to your museum, what do you do? Lots of topics here. We're going to dive in. I think we're going to have a good time. You're going to get to see some things that most people who come to the museum don't get to see. This is literally a behind-the-scenes type live stream, so good for you guys. So diving right in, what we're going to talk about is, well, how do you find a fossil? How do you find a dinosaur? Well, fossils and dinosaurs go hand in hand with geology, basically the rocks that we look in for fossils. Behind me, right here, you can see a big map. This is the state of Montana. This is a geologic map. We're fortunate that basically all of Montana, the state of Montana, has been mapped geologically, which means that all the different formations have been mapped. They've been given proper names. We can tell them apart from one another. Let me get a little bit closer to this map here so you can see. All these different colors indicate different geologic formations. So some of these might be a shale, some of these may be a sandstone, some of these might be a mudstone, some of these are volcanic or igneous formations, some of these are sedimentary, and knowing what these are helps us decide where we're going to look for fossils, look for specific fossils. For example, if you take a look here, a lot of green on this map. The area that I'm pointing at refers to the Bear Paw Formation. Bear Paw Formation is a geologic formation which dates from around 70 to 75 million years ago, when a vast sea was over this part of Montana. Basically, Most of this part here of Montana was covered by a warm, shallow sea. And we find fossils in it, like this fossil here, which I'm going to walk up to the camera. It is an ammonite. And you've probably seen this kind of a fossil in fossil shops. It's a coiled cephalopod, so it's related to things like squid and nautilus. This is the outer shell here. It's actually split, so I can actually show you all the various chambers inside, which is kind of cool. And so here's an example of a marine fossil that is found from the bear paw. Lots of ammonites found from there. We can also find other types of marine fossils. We get sharks, we can get coral, we can get big clams, and then we can get fossils like this particular animal here. Any guesses as to what this is? This is a model, of course, but any guesses as to what kind of animal this is? I'm just going to swim it back and forth for a minute. Okay, it has flippers here, basically paddles, long neck, very small head with very pointy, almost dagger-like teeth. Any guesses? Okay, it is a long-necked plesiosaur. Its actual genus name is called Elasmosaurus, and it was a marine seagoing reptile, not a dinosaur, not even closely related to dinosaurs. So it was its own thing, and was a good fish eater. And if we take a look at a cast of one of its skulls, just a cast here, a close-up, I'm going to bring it to the, this is a cast of one of the skulls, again, fairly small. But you can see right here, here's the eye socket. We have these pretty dagger-like teeth here, great for grabbing a hold of fish. And this was actually found here in Montana. And so we have lots of varieties of marine fossils found from the bear paw. I'm going to bring up the next slide. This is one that a marine organism, again, it's not a dinosaur. It is a mosasaur. It is more closely related to things like lizards and snakes. It's actually similar to like a monitor lizard, like a Komodo dragon, and it's found from the bear paw formation. They can get quite large. They vary in size from 10 feet long up to 40 feet long, actually larger than that. But a large seagoing lizard, basically. And it's found from the bear paw. You're not going to find in the bear paw, or you very rarely find any sort of dinosaur material in the bear paw. If you do, it's an example of what we call bloat and float, where a dinosaur has died and been carried out to sea, and then as it decomposes, settles to the bottom of the sea. If you want to find a Tyrannosaurus rex, you're going to go somewhere else. You're going to look at a different formation. There's an area right along Fort Peck Reservoir, and over here in southeastern Montana, this area here, you kind of feel like a meteorologist. This area here, we have a formation called the Hell Creek Formation, and that dates between 66 and 67 million years ago, and that is the records the very end of the age of dinosaurs. So Tyrannosaurus rex and Triceratops, some of the raptor dinosaurs, some of the big duck-billed dinosaurs, they lived at this time period. And so you would look in the Hell Creek Formation. I think our next slide has a Tyrannosaurus in there. Yep, so here's a reconstruction of Tyrannosaurus rex. One of the last large meat-eating dinosaurs, could exceed 40 feet in length, 14 feet tall at the hip, weigh in excess of 8 tons, have a skull that's nearly 5 feet long, and rows of these very large banana-shaped spike-like teeth. Had one of the strongest bites of any vertebrate animal known to science, upwards of 7,000 to 10,000 pounds of bite, so that's nearly 5 tons of bite. And we're going to hop over real quick. I'll show you an example of T-Rex specimens. This is a Tyrannosaurus rex tooth. It's a real tooth, and it's the whole tooth. And like I said, T-Rex has a very strong bite. It could crush bone. It was a crusher. But this whole tooth wasn't exposed out of its mouth when it was alive. This part was. This is the crown of the tooth. Okay? So if you smile and you look at your own teeth, the teeth, part of your tooth that is exposed is the crown. This is what we have here. And the bottom is the root. So over 2/3 of this tooth is root in the socket of the jaw, which means that Tyrannosaurus rex had a very strong bite, had very stable teeth. And we can see that in this cast here. This is a cast of Tyrannosaurus rex left dentary, or part of the lower jaw. So if I was like T-Rex and talking, I would be doing this right now. But this is a one-to-one cast of one of our specimens here at Museum of the Rockies. And you can see these very large, spike-like, banana-shaped teeth. Again, very strong. But if I flip this around, if you look at it from the inside, this is what we call medial. You see some small teeth here that are just kind of coming up. So what's cool about Tyrannosaurus rex and all the dinosaurs is that they regenerate their teeth throughout their entire life. If this crown here on this tooth breaks off, it's okay, because there's another one coming up right underneath it. And that happens throughout their whole life. They don't have to worry about brushing their teeth or eating hard rock candy or candy bars or whatever, because they just had an endless supply of teeth that would come right up after one broke off. You can see this one here, this big tooth here, looks like it's probably getting pretty close to breaking off before this animal died. So, quick question. Since we just established that dinosaurs constantly regenerate their teeth, are there any examples of any modern animals that you can think of that regenerate their teeth? There's some pretty famous ones, I think, that some of you might get, but let's see if you can type that into your chat box and tell us what you think, what kind of animals today regenerate their teeth.
Sharks. Great white shark. Or sharks.
Sharks is an excellent example. They do it in a slightly different way than what we're talking about here, but sharks and fish and reptiles today, crocodiles, alligators, they all regenerate their teeth. It's a feature that we don't have, unfortunately. We've got our 2 sets and then we're done. So we got to be real careful with what we do with our teeth. They don't have to.
So they don't rot. No time to rot.
Well, they can rot, but it doesn't matter.
Okay.
So they weren't eating overly sugary products. At least T-Rex wasn't. So the chances of it getting a cavity, I haven't actually heard of a cavity being found in a T-Rex, but their teeth would break. As that tooth starts to come further out, it becomes structurally less stable, so it becomes weaker. And then if they bite down on a Triceratops femur and bust it off, which probably happened fairly often, no big deal, because there's just another one coming right up. So that's not to say they didn't get infections. We have example of infections all over the fossils of dinosaurs, in their mouths and heads and limbs and all this kind of stuff. So a little bit about T-Rex.
Remind us real quick when the T-Rex lived.
T-Rex lived at the end of the very end of the Cretaceous period, 66 to 67 million years ago, and T-Rex has only been found in North America. Tyrannosaurus rex hasn't been found in Mongolia or China or Africa or Europe. It is a North American dinosaur.
Thanks, Scott.
Yep. All right. So we hop to the next slide. We're going to see one of the long-necked dinosaurs we'll talk about. Long-necked dinosaur called Diplodocus. This is a relative of Brontosaurus, kind of a close cousin. And it is found in Jurassic Age rocks. So the rocks that are probably sound familiar because of a little movie that came out a few years ago called Jurassic Park. Jurassic was a time period well before Tyrannosaurus rex. In fact, Diplodocus and Brontosaurus and Stegosaurus lived at the very end of the Jurassic, so about 148 to 150 million years ago. They're found in a formation that we have here in Montana, down in this part of Montana here, and over here, called the Morrison Formation, which again, 148 to 150 million years old, so it's much older than T-Rex. Tyrannosaurus rex and Diplodocus have never met each other. Diplodocus was long gone before T-Rex ever came around. So if you think about it this way, Tyrannosaurus rex lived 66 million years ago. Diplodocus lived about 150 million years ago. That means you are closer in time to Tyrannosaurus rex than Tyrannosaurus rex was to Diplodocus. That means that dinosaurs were around for a very long time, and because of the rock record and the fossils and where we find them, we know that a lot of these dinosaurs never met one of each other because they never existed at the same time. So it's kind of a neat little bit of trivia. Okay, so kind of gone over geologically what we're looking for, and then we correlate that with the geologic time periods here. This is something here where you've probably seen in books, you've seen in dinosaur books, earth science books, the geologic time scale. And you know, most of these dates are kind of bounded by extinction events. So at the end of the Permian period here, we have an extinction. At the end of the Cretaceous, we have a big extinction, so on and so forth. And like I said, Diplodocus would have lived at the end of this time period here. Let's see if I can closer. The Jurassic period, and then T-Rex would be at the end of the Cretaceous period. There we go. So again, two different time periods, two different geologic formations. They never would have met. Okay. So hopefully it gives you a kind of a basic understanding of how we decide where to go to look for dinosaurs. We want to go look for Tyrannosaurus rex, Triceratops. We're going to look at the Hell Creek Formation. We want to look for a mosasaur or a plesiosaur. We're going to go to the Bear Paw Formation. What is our next slide? Okay, this is kind of a close-up version of this geologic map. If you're having trouble seeing it, again, all the different colors equate different geologic formations. Next slide. So now we're going to go back in time. We're going to get our time machine and we're going to shoot out into space. We're going to go back 66 million years, and I'm going to zone in on the end of the Cretaceous because that's what a lot of the stuff in this lab that we're working on right now is from the late Cretaceous. So if you were to, your time machine TARDIS, and you're flying around the Earth, and you look down, this is kind of what the Earth would look like, the paleogeographic map. Some of these continents you can see look vaguely familiar. They're not in the same spot they are now. And this is a result of Pangea, the supercontinent where all the continents were together, breaking apart. And that process started over 200 million years ago. So by 66 million years ago, North America is getting closer to where it is now. Europe and Asia is getting closer to where it is now. Africa and South America are kind of busting apart. And then you can see that there's these seaways all over some of these continents. We call them epicontinental seaways. And right through North America, one went all the way up through the United States and Canada, bisecting North America. And at one point, that seaway was wide. Went basically from the central part of Iowa to the central part of Utah. So well over 1,000 miles wide. By this time, 66 million years ago, it was receding or regressing. And so areas like eastern Montana and the Dakotas were more like the Gulf Coast states are today, so more like a Louisiana or Alabama, northern Florida. And we can see that in the fossil record. We can see things that tell us that it was much warmer and wetter and kind of subtropical here. We can find types of plants, ginkgo leaves, palm-like trees, cycads, things that you would see growing in Florida today but were once growing here in Montana. The other fossil that I like to show off is this one here. And this was found in eastern Montana in the Hell Creek Formation. So stuff that was 66 million years old. All right, can everybody see it? You're looking at the top of it. These openings here are the eyes. So kind of a side view here. Got some big teeth. Any guesses as to what we're looking at? Alligator. Okay, anyone else?
Crocodile.
Crocodile. Okay. For those of you who answered crocodile or alligator, you're basically right on the money. This is a late Cretaceous 66 million year old crocodile called Borealisuchus. So when T-Rex was stomping around eastern Montana, we also had crocodiles in eastern Montana, telling us again that Montana was much warmer and wetter than it is now. A crocodile would not last very long in eastern Montana today. We have basically short summers that are very dry. We have fairly long winters. So that tells us that the climate was quite a bit different. So that's how we reconstruct some of these environments. And not just the dinosaurs we find, but the other fossils, the turtles, the crocodiles, the fossil plant materials, the things that basically create the environment that Tyrannosaurus rex lived in. Can I get another slide, please? So this is a reconstruction from a paleo artist named Julius Chetney. Again, this is kind of an everything in the kitchen sink view of the Hell Creek environment in the late Cretaceous. So if we take our time machine and we go from being out, basically orbiting the Earth, and we come right down to eastern Montana around 66 million years ago, you might see a scene like this, where you have a Triceratops, a Tyrannosaurus rex, a turtle, some crocs, a little mammal, a little raptor-type dinosaur, and then you see a variety of lush foliage. If you were to take all those dinosaurs and critters out of there and just look at that picture, you might think you're in the bayous of Louisiana by looking at that. So again, when you think of eastern Montana 66 million years ago, this is kind of what you'd be thinking about. All right, so now we're going to get into talking about, now that we have an idea of what it was like, now we have to deal with the present. We have to go out and find these things. So if we can go to the next slide, please. This is how it isn't. So I think many of you have seen the movie Jurassic Park. This is one of the first scenes in the movie where they're at a dinosaur dig site here in Montana, and they have found this complete raptor, this complete velociraptor, completely articulated, which means all the bones are connected the way they would be in line, and all they're doing is brushing it off with some brushes. That almost never happens. I say almost because every once in a while you might find a dinosaur where the sediment, the rock around it is so soft that you just brushed away. But that, as I said, almost never happens. Usually you find them when they're starting to erode out or weather out of the hill. They're not in good shape. They've been frozen and thawed, and they've been rained on and sun bleached. They don't look very pretty. Then you have to dig in the hill, and as you dig in the hill, bone gets better and better. So this is, if all the stars align and this was a perfect scenario, you might find a dinosaur like this, but 99.99% of the time, it's not like this. Next slide. So since I've been talking so much about the Hell Creek Formation, we're going to kind of zone in on that. This is what the Hell Creek Formation looks like, this slide that you see. That exposed rock, which is basically the rock you're looking at that doesn't have sage and grass on it, is the Hell Creek Formation. It dates between 66 and 67 million years ago, records that little slice of time, very end of the age of dinosaurs here in North America. Tyrannosaurus rex, Triceratops, duck-billed dinosaurs like Mosasaurus. The big armored dinosaur with the tail club and Ankylosaurus comes from this time and from this location. Next slide. And what you do to find a dinosaur is pretty simple. Once you find the right kind of rock, you just walk around it looking for bones weathering out. So in this case, you might be able to look, if you see close, you'll see at least 3 students on this hill hiking all over looking for bone weathering out while I take their picture, which is the way I like to do it because I'm getting older now. But we bring students out in the field, they're all MSU students, and so what they're doing is they're trying to find a bone eroding out. Like I said, when they first find it, it may not be that pretty, but if we're lucky and we dig into that hill and take that rock that's over top of it, we'll start finding good bone. Next slide. Here's an example of of just what we're talking about. This is from Aeschylus State Park here in Montana. I was hiking along one day and there was a bone eroding right out of a little bit of sandstone there on a pathway that I was following. So I decided to collect it. It was a whole bone. Doesn't look very pretty on this side. The bottom side was actually quite good. So this is how it was found. So I have to get it out of the ground. What do? Slide. So I have to dig around the fossil, dig around the bone. And I use a variety of tools, picks and awls and hammers. And I create a trench that goes all the way around it. As you can see in the picture, you have the bone in the center, but I've also kept some of the sediment, some of the sandstone and rock that's with it. I've kept that in this pedestal. And that's because that stuff helps hold the bone in place until we can get it back to the lab and work on it. So I've made my trench, I've trenched around it, made a nice pedestal. Next slide. I'm going to cover the bone and part of the pedestal with some sort of separator, wet paper towels or tin foil, because I'm about to put plaster on it, and I don't want to put plaster directly on the bone. Slide. And here we have the finished result after I take burlap strips, dip them in plaster Paris, wrap the whole bone. Once that plaster hardens up, I will dig underneath, all the way underneath, roll the whole thing, and do the same process the other side. And then when I bring it back, example of completely plastered up bone here. This is a rib to a Triceratops. Again, we're plastered on both sides. So we bring it back here and we open it up here in the lab. The example I just showed you was this fairly small bone and fairly manageable. Sometimes we get things that are much larger and take a lot more time. Before we do that, I think I've got a picture of an Dinosaurus that we can show you. So this is a duck-billed dinosaur. This is again the last of the duck-billed dinosaurs. This is a reconstruction. So that limb bone that we collected was a tibia. It was a lower leg bone to an Dinosaurus. But that's all there was. There was nothing else. And that's often how you find these fossils, is just a single bone. Okay, next slide. So we're going to move on to a bigger site. This was a site that was found just last year in 2018. It was a Triceratops site. And one of the first things that we found was a very weathered bone sticking out of the hill. If you look right in the center of that picture, you'll see kind of a white long thing, looks like a log. That is actually part of a femur, upper leg bone. It's in a mudstone, and mudstones are typically soft rock that represent an ancient floodplain. Once we start digging into this hill, we start finding a lot of other bone. Next slide. Because there was a lot of bone coming out all along, we couldn't just dig in one spot. We have to make a big quarry. And you can see there's a bunch of students and volunteers, students from the Museum of the Rockies and volunteers here, or students from Montana State University and volunteers from the Museum of the Rockies, using picks and shovels and awls and scoops to remove that overburden so we can have a nice big quarry. Slide. And once we got down to the bone layer, we basically removed the rock down the bone layer. We went to finer tools, small awls, small picks, things like that. We started uncovering a lot of bone. And on this picture here, to the left, you can see a bunch of ribs. Those are the kind of chocolate brown bones that you see there. In the center is part of the frill, so part of the head shield to a Triceratops. And to the right is a beautiful horn. This is a left side orbital horn, so it'd be the horn right over the left eye, and it's complete. It's not very crushed. It's about 3 feet long. It's a really good specimen. And so, we spent part of 2018 and part of this year collecting these bones. Slide. And as we collect them, we mapped everything. So we have to create a kind of a quarry map of how far these bones are from each other. Are they dipping a certain way? Are they facing northwest, northeast, things like that? Because compiling that information can often help tell us what happened to this animal after it died. Was it transported by a river or a flood? Was it scavenged by a crocodile or turtle or another dinosaur? Do we have examples of borings from insects going into the bone? Was this animal sitting out for a long period of time where insects could get at it? Things like that. So we try to collect as much information as we can on the quarry. It's kind of the CSI of the site. Right? Then, of course, some of these bones are quite large. The femur, the leg bone that we collected was about 4 feet long. So once they are plastered up, we have to hike them out of the field. Here you see a bunch of our Montana State University students hiking one of the limb bones out of the field. You see the outcrops in the back. Again, that's more Hell Creek Formation. That's all very fossiliferous, meaning there's lots of fossils coming out of that formation all over the place. Next slide. And then here's our reconstruction of Triceratops. Again, should be a very familiar dinosaur. I think it's probably one of the most familiar dinosaurs next to Tyrannosaurus rex. 3 horns, big head shield, walks on all 4s. We'll talk a little bit more about Triceratops in a bit. And once we bring that Triceratops back here, what's the next step? Slide.
All right, friends.
There we go. So this is a picture from this lab here. This is our fossil preparation lab. Those are several MSU students that have opened up various plaster jackets and have started to work on preparing the specimens that are in them. We use a variety of tools, which I'll show you here in a second, from dental picks to small pin vices to brushes and to some bigger tools. So we're going to transition over here to this side of the lab where we have got a really cool specimen that we're going to show you.
Scott, how come you can't put the plaster right on the bones?
You don't want to put the plaster right on the bones because the plaster will stick right to the bone, and then when you pull the plaster off, it's going to rip that outermost part of the bone off. And these bones are not turned to stone the way people think they are. They are still mostly bone. They've been changed in a little bit. They've had some mineral added to them. They're obviously chocolate brown in color, but they still record information inside their bones. They still have bone marrow. Sometimes they have growth rings within their bones, like a tree would. So if you just rip off that outer layer of bone, you're taking away information and data. You're basically destroying the bone.
Similar to why you wouldn't want to put a cast directly on your arm, right?
Yeah. I mean, you get skin irritations depending on how the plaster is mixed. You don't want it to adhere to you or stick to you. So when the cast comes off, you don't want it to take your skin off with it.
Thank you.
Okay, so what we're panning to now is a nearly complete dinosaur. And it is from the Hell Creek Formation again. It is a little dinosaur called a Aeschylosaurus. And it's a really cool dinosaur because it is articulated, meaning that the bones are connected to each other the way they would be in life. Here we have part of the tail. This is the right leg and foot here. And claw, toe bone, foot, lower leg, upper leg. You have the chest cavity up there, right arm. We even have a skull for this dinosaur. I'm going to show you here. This is actually a cast of the skull. The real skull is being studied by an expert who works on this kind of dinosaur. But here's where the eye orbit would be. Here's the nostril area. Here's the right jaw. This is a small planting dinosaur. Large ones got to be about 15 feet long. And this particular specimen, as you can see, is in a large jacket. And it was collected back in 1997. So that should give you an idea of how long we've been working on this on and off. It's in a very hard sandstone. This is almost like concrete right here. And so some of the tools that we use wouldn't work on this. And as you can see, it's a very large jacket, and it's taken some time to get down to this. This jacket, when we collected it in the field, was around 5,000 pounds, so that's 2.5 tons. We opened it up and started working on it. Now, for some of the softer material, some of the softer rock that we work on, we can use tools like this. So this is just a little awl to help remove the sediment. This one here might scare a few of you. It's a dental pick. I promise you that we don't use this on anyone here. We don't use it on fossils. And pin vices like this. Again, sharp, pointy, delicate things that help remove the sediment. We also use brushes, toothpicks to expose the bone. When the bone is exposed, like this we have here, the right foot, we will coat it with some sort of preservative. In this case, we use stuff called Vinac. So Vinac is just a made-up word for these little plastic beads that we dissolve in acetone. This is a solution, so there's actually liquid in here. And we dissolve these beads in acetone. Because the bone is still mostly bone, that means that there is open space, pore space, tiny little holes in the bone that will absorb moisture. And so what we'll do is we'll take a brush like this, we'll dip it in our Vinac, and we brush it on the bone like so, and it will seep into and be absorbed by the bone. The acetone evaporates away, but that dissolved plastic that we have in here will fill in that open pore space and help strengthen the bone. Now, in the case of this particular dinosaur, because the rock is so hard, this tool very rarely works. I mean, I would have to work at this for most of the rest of my life to get this to be of any use to take out all of this. Fortunately, we have other tools that run off air compression. So what I have here is basically a miniature jackhammer. It's called an air scribe. I'm going to fire this up so it's going to get loud for a second. And what we can do, because this part here, this tip, reciprocates many thousand times a minute, we can use this, again, just like a miniature jackhammer. And it helps remove this sediment. It goes faster than using that little awl that I showed you. Still not incredibly fast. And again, this sandstone is very hard. So you can see why it takes so long to get these bones exposed. So that's part of the process. Once we uncover the bone, we put some consolidant on it. If we have to use a glue, like sometimes we'll have breaks, we'll use a glue like this, which is basically like a super glue to help kind of knit the bones together. We'll use that. We will make molds and casts out of these. We will sometimes take a 3D scanner and scan the bone so you have an exact three-dimensional digital representation of the bone. And then often we will cut these bones. I know it sounds kind of strange that we go to all of this work to preserve them and then sometimes we will cut them. But the reason that we do that is because inside of these bones, inside of that leg bone and this shin bone, there is information. As I mentioned before, most of these bones are still bones, so they have their internal structure. And what I want to show you here is this is a slide. So this is a cut chunk of Diplodocus bone that has been cut, sanded down, embedded in this piece of plastic, this resin here, and it's so thin that we can actually put light through it. So if you can see here, this is the bone, but I can actually make light come through it because it's so thin. So all those little openings that you see here are these little round circular openings where blood vessels would have went through in life. And sometimes we can actually see growth rings in the bone, which will tell us how old the animal was when it died, kind of like a tree. So looking inside of the bones has become very important. And getting those bones ready to do that, basically this preparation process is super important. Now, there's one other thing I forgot to mention. I'm looking right at it. Is the other reason that this particular specimen is so cool, not just because it's all put together, but we have an interesting patch of something here. Right here, it's kind of dark stuff that's kind of pebbly and uneven in texture. We have some more of it up on the body. It is a type of soft tissue preservation. And soft tissue preservation is kind of a rare thing. Anyone want to give a guess as to what sort of soft tissue this might be that's preserved here? Any guesses?
Oh, right on. You've got skin.
Skin. That's correct. So here we have, it's not actually the real skin. Real skin is long gone, but it's the impression of the skin. And we also have it, looks like up on the upper part of the leg and part of the hips and things like that. So we do get soft tissue preservation in dinosaurs and other fossils. It's still more the exception than the rule, but it does happen and we can get some really cool information. All right. So we've seen several different stages of what we do in the lab here, and I'm going to wrap up with talking about this cool dinosaur over my left shoulder, which should be recognizable to most of you. It's Triceratops. It is a real skull. And orient you, we've got two orbital or eye horns here. Here's the eye socket. Here's where the nostrils be, the nose horn, the upper jaw. We have well over 100 different specimens of Triceratops here at the museum. Not all are complete. Some are, vary from 10% complete up to 60, 70% complete. But what it gives us, because we have so many, is we have a really good library of Triceratops specimens where we can study differences in them, similarities, cut their bones like I just showed you, tell you about how old one of these Triceratops might have been, how fast they grew up. And in the case of their skull and skeletal structures, we can see some pretty cool things. So I'm going to walk up on this one. This is a horn to a juvenile or kid Triceratops. And you can see right here, here's where the eye would be. Here is the horn, and it's curving upwards, which is completely different than what the horns on this is. So as an adult, the horns start to curve forward and down. As juvenile, they curve upwards. We call this change. The change that you see here, going from this to this process is an ontogeny, called ontogeny. It is the changes that occur through growth as the animal matures. And so that tells us that juveniles and adults are likely to be able to tell each other apart based on their ornamentation of their skull and their throat. One of the questions we always get is, what were the horns for? For a long time, it was thought that Triceratops and all of its horned dinosaur relatives used their horns for defense, as a weapon. But more research indicates, like we're doing here, that probably wasn't the primary use of it. Probably used it as basically telling each other apart, telling juveniles from adults, as a display mechanism more than anything. And what's also interesting is that if they were fighting with T-Rex all the time, you would think that we would find more Tyrannosaurus rex specimens with injuries on their legs or their gut area, showing that these horns had done some damage. So far, we don't see anything that we can look at a T-Rex and say, yeah, that's definitely a horn, Triceratops horn. So we do a lot with Triceratops.
How much would you say that skull weighs?
Yeah. Well, it is very heavy. We have a iron armature underneath this thing to hold it up. So you're probably looking at something that's probably in the 500 plus pound range.
What is the longest one that's been collected?
The longest Triceratops skull is in excess of 8 feet long. So this is not the biggest they can get, but just to give you an idea, my wingspan is 6 feet. So this thing is longer than 6 feet. So, but it could get bigger. Triceratops had the biggest skull of any land vertebrate animal.
And just as a reminder, are dinosaurs reptiles, Scott?
So dinosaurs are a type of reptile, but there's this different from some reptiles we see today. There's different from crocodiles and lizards, as we are from kangaroos. So kangaroo is a mammal, we're a mammal, but we are separated by quite a distance. So same thing goes for dinosaurs, and of course many dinosaurs, your meat-eating dinosaurs in particular, your small ones are more closely related to birds than they are to some of the oldest dinosaurs. We can find dinosaurs with feathers on them, little raptors with feathers. There's even some primitive relatives of Tyrannosaurus that have feathers on them. So what's happening right now in dinosaur world is we're getting a better definition of what really makes a dinosaur a dinosaur. How are they different? How are reptiles different? You know, so there's a lot of difference between a lizard and a crocodile. Even though they are reptiles, they are not the same thing.
So if I heard you correctly, the modern animal that is related to the Triceratops is a bird.
Sort of. So Triceratops belongs to a group of dinosaurs called the Ornithischians. All right, and that includes Triceratops, Aeschylus, your duck-billed dinosaurs, Thescelosaurus, we just saw. The other group of dinosaurs are called the Saurischians, and those include your long-necked dinosaurs and your meat-eaters like Velociraptor, T-Rex, Allosaurus. The bird line, the bird family, comes from that theropod line, basically that Saurischian group of dinosaurs. So birds are more closely related to T-Rex than to Triceratops. If that makes sense. But birds are more closely related to Triceratops than they are to a crocodile.
Okay, last question before we wrap it up. How much would a complete T-Rex skeleton weigh?
I don't know the answer to that because a lot of what the bones, how much they weigh, depend on how much mineral has gotten into them. If they have a lot of iron content or manganese, they're going to be heavier. In some cases, they don't have a lot of that mineral, so they're lighter. I can tell you that in life, a Tyrannosaurus rex was estimated to weigh around 8 tons. So much more than an African elephant.
Like 10 dump trucks?
Yeah, well, let's say 8 tons would be, well, it would be a couple dump trucks.
Okay.
So anyhow, hope we covered a lot of ground. Hope you had a good time.
Thanks, Scott. High fives to Scott. High fives to the friends back out there. Thanks for being with us today. I know it's super exciting to be down here in the prep lab of Museum of the Rockies. Join us again on December 13th for our next program. And in the meantime, practice being a scientist yourself. Ask lots of questions and shoot us an email if you have any more. Thanks so much. Have a great day.